David, after the 8-minute speech that I did in December last year, they said, David, you need to come down to our Melbourne to run some competence workshops. I need to be as great a speaker as you. So it's been going on for the last year, just under a year. At the moment, there was an independent program for people with disabilities to live independently. I thought, why not actually reverse the role and actually create a independent living program for able-bodied people run by people with disability. They've done the hard yards, they can do it, and they can actually show, hey, it's actually not that hard, cooking's not that hard, budgeting's not that hard, cleaning's not that hard. It's actually sort of like a role reversal, similar to, I guess, Matilda with the book when Harry Wonderland says to Matilda, when a person is bad, they need to be punished. So in other words, able-bodied people can support people with disability, but there is nothing, I've sort of looked around in the market, nothing where people with disability can actually support able-bodied people. The reasoning behind it is one of my, I did a bit of research at the last Human Rights Committee meeting catch-up via Zoom. Australia's got one of the highest disability, or the lowest disability participation, employment participation rates in the OECD countries. That needs to be changed. There's a great opportunity, thanks to COVID, with people unable to cook and things like that, to actually use their hidden talents, hidden skills, getting into the workforce or getting into employment, giving back to society, but also tapping into those hidden skills and hidden talents that they've got that being utilised in the traditional workforce. I think there's a huge opportunity to, and can actually, able-bodied people can learn from people with disability, and then when the able-bodied people are being taught these things, they'll say to the person with a disability, have you actually thought about doing such and such and such? So it's actually a mentoring process that works both ways, also busting myths. And the great thing, it's actually being able to give back to society, working both ways, and just demystifying the fact that cooking, it's actually not that hard once you break it down into steps. I've got so many recipes that I've tried, and I would love to try other recipes that you guys throw at me to increase my repertoire, because it's the only way that I can truly excel is if I push myself by throwing challenges, but more so than anything else, it's the chance of actually giving back to society when you've been told you won't be able to walk, you won't be able to talk, and you just be in a wheelchair all the time. For me, busting those myths, it's really, really important, and I think for me, it's a powerful message, and to help other people that are, shall we say, more able than me, or more, shall we say, more mobile, to actually say, these things, it's not that difficult, it's not that challenging, let's just break it down into steps, and I'm sure you can do it. But I mean, it's the main thing is busting myths and sort of changing the perception of the people with disabilities about themselves, that they can actually do something. We just need to make, like with government policy and that, easier for them to get into the workforce. At this point, that's another speech we're going to, but for me, it's about busting myths. As one of the founders of Aruba's formerly House of Message was told when he contracted polio, trying to get him back into the workforce, he was told people with disabilities don't work, they just sit at home, read newspapers or watch TV. That was way back in like the 60s and that, or early 50s, early 60s. Times have changed. But kind of ironic at this point in time, people are stuck at home, can't actually go out, and it's been really, really challenging. So there's an opportunity, thanks to COVID, to actually benefit the community, make it a better place, and actually empower people thanks to looking at the ability of the person with a disability, give them confidence, and actually empower them to achieve their goals and to actually make them the best in life. I hope this has been enlightening and that we can get the message out further.
Thank you, David. I would now like to invite Andrew to the stage to facilitate that wonderful speech from David.
Okay. Green light. You have text that works. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, Dave, for your enlightening speech on the marriage between disability and ability and the mentoring and sharing of supporting each other. Has anyone got any specific comments around the way around David's speech? Now, David, is there anything in particular you want to focus on? Like on structure?
I just want general feedback from you guys to actually make it like a really good speech.
Okay.
Hi, I've got feedback.
Okay, Shavira, just can we hit the speaker volume?
Okay. The feedback, David, I find your speech very inspirational, but one thing you could do is emphasize the words people with disabilities, mentoring able-bodied people, because those are sentences we don't really hear. So emphasizing those as well. And also another thing, sorry, can I add one more if that's okay? Okay, another one I want to emphasize on is that maybe have some hand gestures. So like breaking it down of able-bodied people and people with disabilities, mentoring able-bodied people. Because it's a brand new concept. And so if you really emphasize on those words, you can really grab the audience attention even more. I can't hear you guys.
All right, thanks, Shavira. Romani?
Yes, also some key points. I mean, if David can use some anchor points without staying in one place and use the stage to emphasize, I mean, use the stage in 3 different points, places, so that he can have used one particular place as one particular anchor, then another topic. So they know that he's speaking of something else, and also he's not standing still there at the stage in front of all of us. So when he moves, even if a person has lost, I mean, her person's mind has drifted off, the mere presence that he has moved across somewhere else will make them stand up, take notice that he is about to say something else, something different. It's just a thought.
Anyone else? Jill?
Yes. David, I think the overall story that you have told in that speech would benefit from some third-party stories. And I know from other conversations that we've had that you have a number of other examples that would be better dropped into that speech.
Now, I'm happy to redirect the January meeting next year with a few stories in that.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah,
Thanks, Jill.
no problems, David. You should do that. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll add a couple of things. I think you could put a bit more structure into your speech. So you had a good introduction and your conclusion was a bit softer. And then in the middle, you told a number of stories, but the stories sort of overlapped each other.
Okay.
I think if you actually just went with a cooking story and then you went with another, like if you structured it to say 3 specific stories that told us specific message, that you'd actually get more audience engagement. And with respect to moving across the stage, you could just use the stage to move from one story to the next if you want to stay in one spot. And that at least breaks it. You can transition by a small pause and then bring up the next story. So I think you've got some stories there that are just intertwined.
Yes.
And your vocal variety, everyone's made, there's been some comments before, some vocal variety and hand movement. And remember, this camera is actually one of the audience members. So you've really got to look around the room and you've got to look at the camera. It's a new world. Any other comments or any other? Yes, Linda.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for a very informative presentation, David. What I would like to see is a more commanding and confident conclusion, something for all of us, able and disabled, a call to action with some emphasis on we are all in this together.
Thanks, Linda. All right, any others or before we wrap up? Indy. He's taking a scenic route.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What an informative speech. I was really moved by the thought that disabled people supporting the able people. It's a very, very powerful thought and very powerful message. It really hit my heart. So what we could emphasize more is connecting with the story, which are really making the point home. I think I will not repeat what has already been said, but when we are moving from one story to another, it should build up rather than build down. So towards the end, you were actually building down. So we want to see a ramp up. That's the only thing I would add to what has been really said. Thank you.
Thanks, Indy. All right, that wraps up our roundtable feedback, and I'll hand back to our chair, Jill Walker. Jill.
Thank you, Andrew, and I'm sure David will find that facilitation useful. We now have our second speaker, who is joining us via video, and our second speaker is Romani. Now, Romani, we don't have your title or an introduction, so I'm just going to hand the floor to you to kick off your speech.
I did put the title on your website. I did it this morning, though. Okay, anyway, I will tell you what it is. The title of my speech is From Conflict to Consensus, and it's on effective coaching, level 3, speech 1. And it's all about, I'll read the purpose statement. The purpose of this project is for a member to work within a group to practice reaching a consensus on any topic. And what I'm going to tell you is a couple of instances where I was able to lead a group to a consensus when there was conflict. My introduction is going to be how, as a young solicitor, I spoke to my partner. I delivered a speech in front of my partners for them to reach a consensus. happened a long time ago, probably about 30 odd years ago. I was 24, 25, and I was a newly minted solicitor in Hong Kong. A client, a poor woman, came over to me asking and wondering if I can represent her in a divorce. I knew the person was working as a maid in Hong Kong, and maids can't afford private solicitors' fees. In Hong Kong in 1980s, the concept of legal aid was not there. But I did want to help this woman. Hearing her story was heartbreaking. She was a mother, working as a maid in Hong Kong, a highly educated woman, but a mother of 5. She had fallen in love with another person in Hong Kong and wanted to get a divorce. But she married in Philippines, and under their law, she was not entitled to a divorce. What am I to do? I wanted to help her. But then again, as a lawyer in a private firm, the firm looks at profits. Because I wanted to help her, I went and spoke to my senior partner who I was reporting to and said, look, I've got this client, I want to help her. I don't want to charge any fees from her. And I could see the partner's face getting red. He said, let's put it to all the other partners. You come and speak to them. In my mind, I was worried. I could have lost my job. I could lose my job. So that evening, I was summoned to a meeting with the partners, and I had to lay down my grounds, what I wanted to do. So there I was, butterflies in my tummy, looking at all these old gentlemen. And I thought to myself, no, it's fine. I'm going to give it a go. So I told them the person's background. I was not making any headway whatsoever. And their theory was, why should we help a woman? She's not going to be of any benefit to us. We are only going to lose time and money. Then I thought, how can I get them interested? Maybe I should tell them the benefits of working pro bono, that our reputation would grow. And I tried that approach. They were not even thinking about it. Then I said, what if I only charge disbursements and I forego my hourly, the time I spent on the case, forego my salary? Then I could see a smile in the senior partner's face. And I thought, yep, I'm making headway. Fortunately, I didn't have a family to look after. So they agreed. And I was very happy to have my own first client who I could help. I was able to get her annulment because concept of divorce was not heard of in Philippines and they wouldn't approve. With that, the maid went and spoke to other maids about me. And then they all started coming to me for whatever they had, whichever conflict they had, whichever problem they had. And then they started coming to me for their work issues. And I was building a small practice. And with workmen's compensation, I was able to get funds from the government for the company. One small help, and my work as a workers' compensation lawyer grew. My senior partners were happy with that. The next instance, I'm going to tell you about an issue which happened in Australia. As a lawyer for legal aid, I realized that before a divorce, always the court would order mediation. Now, this was a time that legal aid was not given for mediation. But when there was precedent, sort of a precedent, where the courts were allowing mediation, why shouldn't we not do the same thing? Why shouldn't we give a grant of aid? Again, I speak to my senior solicitor who says, put a briefing paper, a brief, pros and cons. Think about the pros and cons. So prepare a brief, meet the senior lawyers and the directors. Ask them, would you approve? Yes, sounds good. They approve. Then, in Toastmasters, yes, we are Toastmasters. We are supposed to be united. But then there will be one person who will not agree with you and will always try to do their best to put a spark on your wheel when you are trying to do something. What I did was in Toastmasters meetings or executive meetings, if a person is going to be contentious, I try to see what that person's view is and either be prepared or instantly try to rectify or address those issues so that each person can come into an agreement. So eventually, whatever we do, we reach a consensus. Sometimes it's not easy, but what I feel and what I believe is sometimes reaching a consensus is easy, but sometimes one person, namely you or myself, basically, we have to give in too. If we stand on our ground and saying, no, I want it my way, we'll never be able to reach consensus. So always, if you want to reach a consensus, try to understand what everyone wants, and then try to focus on a couple of issues where you can get all those people, everyone to agree on. Give in. That will make it easier in reaching a consensus. Over to you.
Thank you, Ramani. And I would now like to invite David to the floor for the facilitation and Indy as the scribe.
Now, Ravani, what would you like to focus on in the speech? What 3 headings would you like us to put on the board?
I'd like you to
Can you say that again?
I'd like you. There's too much of an echo. All right, I think that should work. Can you hear me now without the echo? Yes. Okay, I would like you to speak on how I could improve my speech and areas that I did well.
Can't hear
And
you.
David?
Can now.
David,
Did you want 2 or 3 headings?
2 headings would be fine, doesn't matter, but I just want David, David, totally unrelated topic, but I really like your speech. Well done.
Just wanted to let you know she really liked your speech. So thank you.
I need to get in touch with you, Ravani, so we can get it off the ground.
I know.
David, you've got to be in front of this screen.
Sure.
Just there. That's it.
Now, who would like to go first?
Okay. Ramani, that was a great story. I love that story, and that it really resonates. What I found with the story was it needed to punch out a bit harder. So it needed. I love the way you deliver in the context of you deliver at a pace which is quite easy to digest, but there's not enough vocal variety and not enough punchiness with respect to telling that story. I like the way you moved chronologically through the story, so it was easy to follow in that context. But I'm looking for a bit more punchiness, particularly at the end as well, when you come back with that lesson. Nice work.
2 points following on from what Andrew has said. Firstly, I think both the vocal variety and the punchiness would be aided if you were standing. I think sitting to deliver a speech automatically compresses the diaphragm, and unless you make a really concerted effort, makes it a lot harder. I also wonder if you could restructure the speech into almost a bookending. So identify what is the biggest takeaway that you want the audience to take from that speech. Then find the part of the story that really speaks to that takeaway and split that story. So maybe the Hong Kong story, you could do the introduction or the earlier part of it, get to a cliff edge, then move into the legal aid that backs it up a little bit, and then your ending is, and of course the real lesson for this is the woman in Hong Kong, whatever. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Hi.
Suvira.
Can I also add that, because I was just listening to the speech, maybe with the structure also give us it's like an essay. When you do your introduction, say, okay, I'm going to talk to you about different countries I was in and conflict throughout the time as well. So maybe the audience knows what you're going to talk about, and it's not just suddenly a surprise. Does that make sense, or
It does.
is it useful?
Yep. Thank you.
Offer something? Thank you so much for your speech. I'm Colton. So lovely. Thank you so much. I don't have a lot to add other than the quality stuff that's already been added, but I just want to say your content is tremendous. The potential of that speech is incredible. I think if you take on board creating more of that emotional feel, one thing that I did notice that the eyes were down a lot of the time as if they were on notes. I'm not sure if you have notes in front of you or not,
I didn't.
but remember that the camera's up at the top of your screen. So looking at us means looking up higher. So even if you're not reading, if you're looking at yourself on the screen, it still looks to the audience as if you are reading, and it breaks that connection with us. It's hard to connect through this thing, but we've got to practice it. And I think that would add a lot, and then willfully you connected, and that on its own will do a lot to increase that emotion. Then if you can add in that vocal variety, that punchiness that Andrew was talking about, and standing up, as Jill said, I think all those pieces will come together to take what you have here, which is an incredible story and object lesson, and make us connect with it more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda?
I really enjoyed the speech. Thank you very much for a very unique presentation. It was a bit unfortunate that you didn't have a formal introduction by a second person. So your introduction itself and drawing us in, there was a bit of conflict there. I would like to see in your next presentation of this speech, your ability to have a dynamic opening so that you are grabbing us immediately. And perhaps, as Jill mentioned, with splitting your story, you could actually perhaps start with the poor maid who had an issue and build that up as your opening, as a dynamic and grabbing opening. Otherwise, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
An idea sparked by what Linda's just given you is the idea of getting the audience to put themselves in the position of that Hong Kong maid. You could even open with the word imagine and then build up. So tell the story from the perspective of the maid, maybe what she was looking at if she didn't get legal assistance, because that's how she'd be seeing it. And then you could almost bring that round to a much better result because you were generous enough to give her that assistance. And I think if you combine that with the book ending, your opening could be all about audience, imagine yourself in this position, build that one up. Then you come back to the legal aid and the lessons that came out of legal aid and mediation and so on, and then end with essentially the victorious maid at the end.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah. Amani, this was really a powerful speech. So congratulations for a very powerful message for all of us that everything is possible. So one thing for improvement, since there is a large focus on improvement areas, is what was a key takeaway from this? Towards the end, if you could reinforce that message, which you started with, that would be much more powerful for every one of us to take that message home. Thank you.
It would appear that the evaluation comments have come to an end. So I'd like to thank everyone, and I am sure Romani will put those points into good use, and we will get a new improved version of that speech down the track.
Definitely, and thank you.
The next item on our agenda is for me to reconvene the meeting. Based on that, I'm actually going to allow us to have a short break so that I have something to reconvene from. So I'm going to leave everything running and we'll go and grab a drink, some biscuits, and we will be back here in maybe 10 minutes.
Didn't the break print out?
So it goes right to
You know.
reconvene. The timing's right, but,
Well, I hope you will forgive me for giving myself something to reconvene from.
What happened here? Oh, it's gone on. Oh, we can leave that on, actually. It's just gone black.
it's just timed
I
out.
think it's what's
Okay,
happened is somebody's gone. Oh, we
Hi. Hi.
Ask
Hello.
someone to turn their video off.
Okay,
We just be turning our videos on and off.
This video, she turned hers off.
we can't hear you.
We have turned our videos off.
Can you turn that up a bit? Look, sorry. But say again, Shavira?
We have turned our videos on and off. That's why it's black.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Wow.
So let's give this a bit of a feed. Down to 38%.
Jill. Hi, Greg. Hi. Jill. Just holding the entire meeting. She's a catty. Hi, Greg.
Don't put your face so that. Come take a photograph.
Jill.
Can you see yourself? Don't take it, yeah. Don't make noises.
Just keep going. She'll eventually see him. Liking it?
Gently, yeah, gently. Gently. Just behind the ears. Great.
You liking it there?
At the moment, we think.
He's not used to you.
You see?
Why did you come up again? I need to keep thinking of it later. No. Andrew, you're mute.
She can see.
Yes.
Talking about you, so we need to be on mute.
Yeah,
Oh,
did you get
lovely.
that? Yeah, we're talking all about the two of you and the cat.
We came to, this cat is being reluctantly carried so that we can show it to you guys.
Beautiful.
Yes. He's been hiding under a couch. He has a set place. Jill, what do you think of him?
He's gorgeous. I want him.
Does he have an introduction and a body and a conclusion?
Yes.
He does. This is the introduction. And that's the body.
That's the conclusion.
Very good.
Okay. You give it to me? Yeah.
Where'd Colton go?
Doesn't.
Okay. Oh, okay. Just put him down.
What's on next? Actually, no, we've got table topics next.
Hi. How are you today going?
Shavira, this is going to be an interesting session.
Yes.
Looking okay. A little bit of an echo.
It's the flipping. You need to get some way so that we can have microphones here that are just live. And I don't understand why the microphones we've tried haven't let us do that.
Yeah. It has been challenging. But this is working just.
Not the heartache like we did last meeting, because everything went to.
Last time everything was working better than this, I think. Something worked last time. I've got no idea what it was.
Last time we were able to use my laptop.
Andrew, do you have more than one microphone? Or alternatively, do you have the sound on a second computer that needs turning off?
Oh, you're getting an echo.
You can even use the center head for him to play.
Ramani, what's the name of your cat?
It's actually not my cat. It's a friend's
And
cat.
what is the name of the cat?
Okay,
Mr. Gray.
Mr. Gray.
Oh, okay. A really unique and unusual name.
This cat needs to be around people 24/7.
Okay, so where does it sleep?
Right. It's a friend's cat. but because
Yeah.
so it sleeps near the family. I think it sleeps on my friend's head.
Oh, okay, so it's always in the bed with everyone else.
Yes, it's always in the same room. And you'll
All right, now when you're looking after this cat 24/7, or is it only for the day?
only for the day.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
okay, all right, okay.
But he has a specific place in our house where he likes to hide. He has two now.
Oh, yeah,
Now, he just goes there, just goes up to the couch.
yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Linda, do you have any animals?
Yeah, we used to have 3 or 4 cats, but we're down to 1 now.
Can you bring him? What happened? Can you bring him over?
No, because I'm not in my house, I'm in my shed. So I'd have to go into the house to get him. Although when I went in a moment ago to get a drink, he was wanting to know why I wasn't in the house.
Cats are very demanding, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And also I read a very interesting article, which I'm sure you may or may not be aware of, that people who do not like cats are very controlling people, because cats cannot be controlled. So anyone who doesn't own a cat, and you too don't own a cat, so you must be very controlling people, right?
Yes. Pretty much. Not mom. She's too laid back.
I like any animal, Linda.
Love animals.
Yeah, well, I can do without a few of the Australian animals, you know. Right at the moment, there is a big issue with the quolls here in the area. They like to eat everyone's chickens. So
But then that's a native animal.
yeah.
We're back on. Let's bring Jill back to the stage.
I hope everyone enjoyed the short break, organised whatever drink, snack, fruit, meal, sustenance they felt was appropriate. And I'd now like to bring us back for the second part of this meeting. We're going to start our meeting with table topics. So I'd like to invite Shavira, our table topics master, to the floor.
Thank you, Jill. With table topics, this is a chance for us to speak. If anyone wants to know why I'm moving like this, my mother has got me, Ramani has just got me for my shorts and is dragging me. Anyway, with that in mind, 2020 has been a crazy year. And with Christmas, there's a spirit of giving. And taking. So this table topics is around giving and taking. And you're required to speak within 1 to 2 minutes. Colton, would you like to have a go on table topics? Awesome. Now, my first question goes to Andrew. Andrew Deck? There has been a rise in pregnancies thanks to coronavirus. What is one bit of advice that you would give new parents of 2020?
A rise in what? I didn't hear the first.
Coronavirus babies. So babies families being pregnant with the firstborns.
A rise in pregnancies. What advice am I going to give to parents?
Yes.
Thank you, Shavira, for such a great question. My advice for parents in a rise in pregnancies is abstinence. Complete and utter abstinence. Not from sex, but from alcohol. Because it's alcohol that cause us to have unsafe sex. And unsafe sex can produce some disastrous results if you do not want to have a child. Now, not that that's happened in my family, but we did have a late arrival. I had 2 twin boys, not 2 twins, just one set of twins. And 10 years later, just when we were slotting into a relaxed life, along came my daughter. I can't tell you whether alcohol was involved, but it was definitely a surprise. And what a great surprise it was. But something I'd like to provide advice to everyone on with respect to unplanned pregnancies. All of my kids' birthdays are in either November or December, and I married my wife in November. So here's the tip. If you don't want to have a cram-packed agenda leading up to Christmas, which we all have through work and all of the other functions, you don't want to throw in 3 birthday parties and an anniversary. So my tip on avoiding unwanted pregnancies, is stay away from alcohol, and in particular, stay away from alcohol 9 months before Christmas. Thank you, Shavira.
Thank you, Andrew. At least we know what you did during January and February, which suddenly sounds wrong in my head. Jill, what is one gift that you will happily give to new parents of COVID babies?
There are lots and lots of gifts that we could give to the parents of a new baby. It's very typical and traditional to give gifts to parents of new babies, and I am sure that our only new parent in our audience, Colton, can attest to that. So I would step away from giving material gifts, and I would look to find a way of how can we give those new parents the things that they themselves are short of. And I suspect, never having been in that situation myself, that the things we want to look at giving or finding a way of giving are time, because we used to have 24 hours in a day before the baby arrived, and we still have 24 hours in a day, but somehow far fewer to do what we choose with. And perhaps more specifically, I would want to find a way of giving those new parents some sleep. So I would try to make the life easier for new parents by giving them time, doing something for them, or giving them some sleep. Back to you, Shavira.
Thank you, Jill. Congratulations, Colton, our new dad. With that in mind, I'd like to invite the new dad over, Colton, to ask, what is one thing, name a few surprises that you had during 2020?
Thank you very much, Table Topics Master. Well, one surprise I think you guys already know about is a new son. He's 5 weeks old tomorrow. He was not due to COVID. He came just beforehand, but he was no less of a surprise because we moved into our new apartment here in Sydney, and the next day got that positive test result. So we knew life was changing right away. And then, of course, coming to Sydney, we were staying with my wife's family in Tasmania. That's where she's from. Prior to coming up here, we'd arrived just about a year ago now, actually. And we'd left most of our belongings there in Tasmania thinking we'll go back in March or April and pick up all of our winter clothes. We don't need them, it's summertime in Sydney. Well, of course, we've gone through the winter without any winter clothes because, as everyone knows, there was no getting into Tasmania until just a few weeks ago. So another surprise was not being able to visit her family, even though we came all the way back to Australia to be closer to the family. It seemed like somehow we'd never been further apart. So that was a big surprise as well. The last surprise, and I am very grateful for this surprise, but the last surprise was when my mother-in-law arrived 4 weeks before the baby was due to help us with the new arrival. And then the baby arrived a week late. And my mother-in-law is still here helping us and supporting us. Isn't she lovely? I'm so thankful for her. But then when she asked, is it okay if I go home in January? And we were like, of course, please go home, be with your husband, take care of your home in January. But she wasn't sure if we would be okay with her leaving at that time. And I said, we have valued every single day that you've been here. We appreciate you so much. But of course, you should go home at this time and see your family. So we've had a lot of surprises, but all of them have been blessings. All of them have been beautiful, other than being a little bit chilly in wintertime. But hey, we're not in Siberia. We're fine in Sydney. Thank you very much, Table Topics Master.
Congratulations on your new son. With that in mind, what is one? So this goes to my fellow Zoom person, Linda. Or Lydia, how do I pronounce your name? Linda.
Linda, yeah.
Linda, what is one takeaway message that you have gotten from 2020?
Thank you very much, Madam Table Topics Master. What is one takeaway message from 2020? Well, we've all been hearing the slogan, we're all in this together. All around the world, we're all in this together. But I really wonder, are we really all in this together? When it comes to the equality of countries and of people, are we really all together in this worldwide pandemic? The one takeaway I have come that has really resonated with me is that no, we are not all together in this. We have different levels of togetherness. Some people have yachts, and some people have canoes, and some people are almost drowning. So I would like to hope that at the end of this year, with Christmas and the season of giving, that everyone considers a little bit more the togetherness and what it means for all of us around the world. Back to you.
Good point there, Linda. With that next topic, I would like to ask David, what is one way, okay, but how would you make 2021 better? What is one gift that you would give 2021?
Thank you, Shabira, for such a wonderful, insightful question. I think with 2021, to make it better than 2020 and like 2019, is to look at the lessons that we've learned from the last 12 months and try and see if we can continue some of that togetherness and also working from home, because it's a lot more peaceful on the road and in the shops. Continue what we've learned, just continue what we're doing on with the reduced restrictions, but also making more of a community and also checking in with each other to make sure that we're all okay, because mental health for everyone at this time is really, really important. But I'm finding that more and more people are checking, like with friends and family, we're checking in on each other more than we used to before the pandemic, which I think is a really good takeaway for me, is actually making sure that we're all okay. And for me, that's a really good positive out of this pandemic. We're actually trying to communicate and keep in touch with each other more regularly. So I think that's a positive from the pandemic that we should continue as we move into 2021. Thank you.
Good suggestions, David, especially about mental health. My next question goes for the last person on the in the grounds, Indy. 2020, okay, 2020 has has caused us to create some strange and unusual habits while being at home. What is one that you have taken in Hindi?
What's the question?
Strange and unusual habits.
That you take from 2020, that you're taking into 2021?
I'll just recap the question. I have understood correctly. So one unusual habit that I picked up in 2020 that I want to take it into 2021. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Shavira. That's a very, very powerful question. So one thing I learned in 2020 is looking after my own health. I have been unhealthy up till now, most of my time. I thought to myself that I was taking care of my body, but actually I wasn't. So I picked up late in the early October, there was a Bike-a-Tour competition in the office, and I put my hand up. I had bike for almost 5 years, and I never used it. So this was the first time I learned how to start riding a bike. And since October, I have been doing it almost every day. And this is one habit that gets me out of bed in the morning and gives me a time, quality time with myself, where I plan for the day and do things, what I'm going to follow up during the day as well. It gives me an extra time to recount as well of the previous day as well. So this is one habit I'm going to take on into 2021 and build on that. So this is going to give me a little bit more time for myself. Thank you, Shavira.
Thank you, Indy, and nice to know that you're taking care of yourself. My lucky last question goes for the person right next to me, aka my mother, and also known as Ramani. 2020 has been a disaster of a year with so many things going wrong in the world. Pick only one of them to remove to make 2020 better.
Thank you, Shavira. One thing to make 2020 better, I would suggest we should ban people, especially in China, eating food that are not we consider normal. Slaughter of wildlife should be banned, not only in China, but worldwide. Why do I say that? Yes, we all know that in COVID started with some person eating a contaminated bat. I asked myself, why would someone want to eat a bat? Let alone forget it, why would someone want to kill a bat? If anyone has seen a bat in close quarters, they've got humanoid features. They've got beautiful faces, which are expressive. I know because I love bats. Yes, they destroy my fruit garden, fruits, but they have to live too. They don't have a shop to go and buy stuff. So one way to make 2010 to better something, stop people from slaughtering wild animals, stop people consuming wild animals. That should be the law. To me, that would make not only 2020 better, but it'll make all our years better. For not only for us, but for the wildlife population as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Ramani. And that concludes our table topics for today. I now like to hand it back to Jill. Thank you.
Thank you, Shavira, for a thought-provoking and somewhat unexpected batch of questions. The aim of Toastmasters is to continually improve, and the main way that that is achieved through all aspects of the program is through feedback. So I would now like to invite Andrew to give us all, including himself, some feedback on those responses to your inspirational questions.
Thank you, Jill. And thank you for Shavira for some enlightening questions. So first of all, you asked me a question. I can't even remember what it was. Oh, it was about babies, that's right. What an outstanding performance that was. Second to none. Just no recommendations whatsoever. I'll move straight on to Jill. So Jill, a gift for COVID babies. Now, Jill's is an artist when it comes to flipping a question a little bit or looking for an alternative answer. I thought she flipped it brilliantly because when people talk about gifts, it's fairly automatic that we go to something that we buy in the store. But she came back and asked and talked about giving back time. So as soon as she said giving back time, that made a heck of a lot of sense because that's exactly what Colton's mother-in-law's done. She's giving back time to her daughter and her son-in-law, and that's the best gift that anyone could give. I thought it was a great flip on the question, and that's something that's an art in table topics. If you're not quite, yeah, it's also always a good option. The next one, Colton had new surprises, and he did a great job of doing something that's also good in table topics, and that is, if the question can't be answered with one answer, then give three. And he gave three separate answers, which allows him to build up and cover off 2 minutes. And he covered that brilliantly by talking about the surprise for his sons, the surprise from Tasmania and not having the winter clothes, and then his mother-in-law arriving and providing that support. So I thought that was a really, really good response. No, I've got no recommendations, by the way, for that, or yours, sorry. So takeaway message then for Linda. Now, Linda, what a fantastic response as well. I really, really, really liked when you got to the conclusion and you drew the analogy between people that have yachts, canoes, and those that were drowning. Now, one of the arts in public speaking is to paint an image and create feeling, and that created feeling for me instantly when you just move from the extreme wealth to extreme poverty, and the fact that we're all in this together wasn't the right message. We weren't all in it together. I thought you did an absolutely outstanding job of delivering that in 2 minutes. Again, I haven't got a lot of feedback to say what we want to improve. I thought you delivered it really well. Then David came on and answered a lot of questions with respect to 2021 being better. For David, I think you covered off mental health, some learnings, check into one another, family and friends. You covered a lot of material. I'd be looking for a little bit more structure next time, but you know, still a good response. Yep. Then Indy came up, strange and unusual habits, and he talked about bike riding. Well, that was, I did the bike riding challenge with Indy, and through October, Biketober, and on around the 20th, it started raining. That's when I put my bike away. But every day Indy rode. I was really impressed. And I didn't get my bike out for another 10 days until it stopped raining. But nice work, Indy. And I know he's flipped it because he's lost a few kilograms as well along the way, which was nice because he put them on at the beginning of COVID. So I know some of us, I've got my, the only pair of pants that fits me now. So all the other ones are COVID locked away. They don't work anymore. The last one, so then we had Romani, the wildlife. Yes. That was an interesting call out. I live in Gordon, where all the bats live, and they fly across my backyard every night and arrive back in the morning. I don't usually see them in the morning, but I see them flying out at night time. I don't see them as cute, but I think it's really nice to actually connect wildlife with preservation, and that was a really good response to the question as well. So I'm sorry, but I haven't provided much feedback that says it's for improvement, but I think everyone did a cracking job today. Back to you, Jill. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew. And now we return to the prepared or perhaps not prepared speeches. I'd like to invite Colton to the floor, who is going to do an impromptu Meet Colton Stollenmeyer. So to meet Colton Stollenmeyer, please welcome Colton.
Thank you very much.
how much time do we have for this?
How long do you want?
7 minutes.
Yeah. Can we do an 8 to 10 and then maybe I don't use it all?
Yeah, sure.
Just for my timing purposes. Is that all
Yeah.
right, Andy?
8 to 10.
Do an 8 to 10, and I may not end up using it all. Completely impromptu, my friend, so please bear with me. Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters. Thank you so much for this opportunity to introduce myself to each and every one of you. My name is Colton Stollenmeyer. Full name Colton Jack Stollenmeyer, named after my father, whose name is actually John, because his mother was in the Catholic Church and they had to name out of the catechism. So she named him John, but she really wanted 2 children named Jack and Jill. So she has John and Geraldine, but they go by Jack and Jill. And that's my parents, which gives you a little insight into the parents that I'm coming from. Both of my parents are from New Jersey in the United States of America. So if you know New Jersey, it's basically just the butt of all the jokes from everyone from New York. That's where they're from. Then I was born in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains in eastern Tennessee. So I was born surrounded by family and nature, and that's pretty much it. There wasn't much else around. I ran around barefoot growing up, so much so that I would forget my shoes when we went out to town. And mind you, it was a 30-minute drive just to get to the grocery store from where I lived. And so when we arrived in town, which was 45 minutes away, and my mom would look at my feet and I have no shoes. Now, in Australia, not so much of an issue. In America, no shirt, no shoes, no service. It's the law. You can't enter a building, you can't purchase anything, you can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to the grocery store if they're not shoes on your feet. So there were a couple of occasions where my mom had to buy a pair of shoes just so that I could be in town, because we'd already trekked 45 minutes to town, we weren't going back home just for a pair of shoes. And to give you an understanding of why this was even more of a frustrating thing than it might be, my family at this time in my growth was on government support. We called them food stamps at the time in America because we had some times of struggle in our life. My father was at one point, and he's happy to share with anyone who will ask, when he was young, he got into drugs and alcohol and was an addict for about 9 years of his life, which is a long time at any period in life. But when I tell you that he stopped and came out of that addiction at the age of 21, you'll understand how early on he started those things. So we're low battery. I apologize. I'm just going to get that back. So my father, again, started very young with that, and he came out of that and went straight into, not long after he met my mother. My mother had left an unfortunately abusive first marriage. And then mind you, I'm child number 4 across 7 years. And my parents had decided to do their best to dedicate themselves to service. So my dad had gone from working with a church to working in a drug rehabilitation clinic, which was an excellent thing to do, but obviously didn't really pay many bills. So that's why we struggled at the time. So when I would forget my shoes, it was an even more frustrating thing than it might have already been, because my family had some hard times growing up. The other thing you need to know about my childhood is not just that I was out in the bush away from everyone, but that I also stayed there. So I was homeschooled through 10th grade. I only went to school at 11th grade. So my mother, however, did an excellent job of making sure that I was socialized. Thankfully, I didn't come out too odd, only a little bit odd, only just the right amount of odd. Some homeschool children tend to have a missing bit of ability to connect with others, let's call it. And so I'm very fortunate that my mom worked very hard to make sure that we did sports with the local leagues, that we engaged in the homeschool associations, that we made friends in the community, that we went to all sorts of church and community events to make sure that we understood how to interact and the importance of being with others and learning from others and learning to communicate and be part of a society. So I'm very grateful that my mother worked very hard to make that happen. Fast forward a few years, I just want to share a couple of the most important moments in my life from there, now that you have an understanding of the sort of foundation I came from. So born trailer trash, as we call it in America, born in poverty, didn't stay that way. My father became a businessman and worked his way through hard labor, landscaping, lawn care. What do you call it when you push the snow off the road? I'm so sorry, I've lost the word for that. Plowing, thank you so much, Jill. Plowing the snow. Eventually he started to build water gardens. Now, water gardens, if you can imagine, is just waterfalls and streams leading into ponds, or sometimes no pond, that you have in your backyard or on your deck or maybe in your front yard just because you can, which means that it is a luxury item, which means if you can afford them, you can afford to pay a little bit for them. At this time, we moved to South Carolina, where many, many retirees like to love and enjoy their home property because that's where they spend most of their time. So that was when my father really started to make a turnaround. And before long, by the time I was 11 years old, we were living in a gated community on a golf course, which is a big deal in America. He'd done really, really well for himself. So I'd experienced kind of both extremes before I even entered into manhood or adolescence, if you will. And at that time, when I was 12 years old, there in South Carolina, I grew up in a conservative Christian home. We went to church regularly. And my pastor at that church, this new church that we were attending, said to me, would you like to give a sermon one weekend at church? Me had no idea that I was being offered an opportunity to discover something that would change my life. And I believe that many times we're handed this opportunity. We have the opportunity to take it or to not, and we have no idea the consequence or the weight of that decision. Now, I personally am of the belief that that opportunity will come again and again. So you'll have multiple chances to say yes, but unfortunately, some people will say no all their lives to it. I don't know why, and I had no idea why I said yes then, and who knows, because I'm 12 years old. The next year, I was in the throes of puberty, and I was thinking that I knew better than everyone, and I was having fights with everyone. Maybe I never would have said yes if I hadn't said yes that day, but I did. And it's not just that I said yes, it's that the man who asked me was an incredible human being. He didn't just say, awesome, here's the date. Let me know if you have any questions. He said, okay, we're gonna set a date 3 months from now. I'm gonna meet with you every few weeks. First thing is decide something you wanna speak about. Talk to me about what the topic was, what I wanted to say about it. Then talk to me about, okay, how are we gonna develop this? Okay, what stories are you gonna use? What Bible verses are you gonna use? How are you going to connect this? How are you gonna create your message and call the audience to take part and to do something about what you have to say to them? He took me through the entire journey of developing a speech from start to finish. And because of that, the experience I had was completely different than it might have been, because he invested so much into me for no other reason than that he cared and that he could and that he wanted to. So he invested this incredible amount into me. And when I gave that speech, it was, rather than what it could have been, which might have been a nightmare, a disaster, or a scarring experience, it was a fundamentally life-shifting experience. What I found that day was what Howard Thurman says is the thing that makes you come alive. He said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. That day, giving that speech in that church, I found life. I discovered what it was to come alive. I found that thing that made me feel alive and fulfilled, and like I was doing something worthwhile with my time and my life. Now, it wasn't perfect. An elderly lady over here to my right passed out during the sermon, fell to the floor and collapsed. The pastor kind of gave me a nod that I should keep going and that they were taking care of it, and the elders and the deacons came and supported her. And then the paramedics came through the back door of the church with the stretcher and came through church and picked her up and put her on the stretcher and carried her out of church. And I just kept speaking through the situation. So it was truly a baptism by fire. But because I'd been prepared and supported, it didn't ruin everything for me. So I found life, I found purpose in that moment. 4 years later, I'm 16 years old, I see a documentary by the name of Invisible Children. Now, Invisible Children is a documentary about child soldiers in Uganda. At the time, I had no idea that there were such things in the world. Again, I grew up in a tiny little community in a very sheltered world. I don't think I saw alcohol or a cigarette until I was in the double-digit ages, right? Until we moved out of Tennessee. I was so sheltered that I didn't even have an understanding. Yes, I'd experienced poverty, American poverty, where there's a government there to support you, where there's people there where you don't go hungry, that I didn't understand how deep the levels of suffering there really were in the world. And when I saw these children being abducted from their homes in the night, being brainwashed and forced to kill others, I had no idea that this was what was going on in the world. And that led me to other organizations like International Justice Mission. And I found out about how much slavery there was, not just in the world, but in my own country. That Atlanta, Georgia, just a few hours away from where I'd grown up, was one of the biggest global hubs of slavery in the world. And this began a drive and a burn and a fire in me to discover what kinds of things were going on in this world, what kind of suffering there was, and what we were and weren't doing about it, and what could be done about it. And so I committed myself to using this passion that I'd found in speaking, in communicating with others, to motivate them, to inspire them, to empower them to take the steps to try to make this world a better place. Not trying to do everything, but finding something that was a passion burning in their heart, that made them come alive, as I had done that day when I was 12 years old, and use that passion, that fire, that life to make this world a better place, to give life to others. And so here today with you, this is a continuation of that journey, to inspire, motivate, and empower others to discover their dreams and pursue their purposes. As I discovered through that moment when that man invested so much into me, and those moments that followed when I learned that the world wasn't just about me, and the world wasn't necessarily so easy, and that the suffering I'd experienced wasn't necessarily the biggest suffering in the world, that there were people who had more to deal with than I did, and that there were people who needed help and support, and that it turns out the best thing you can do with your life is use it to serve others. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Colton. That was well more than an introduction. That was an inspiration. And I have to admit, I think that 5-week-old little one, whose name we are yet to learn, I believe, has an awesome dad to look up to. Thank you. I'm now going to introduce myself as the facilitator for Colton's speech, and I would like to invite contributions from everyone. But before we go into that, Colton, in particular, what areas would you like us to focus on? How can we most help you take that speech from where it is, which is extremely good, I have to admit, but nevertheless, what can we do for you to take that speech from there to there?
Okay, I think the main points I would look for are where there are ways I could make the story more engaging, so engagement. Were there questions that I left unanswered that should have been answered? So were there holes, basically, in the storyline?
Okay.
And let's see, so the holes, the engagement, and were you connected to the story? Is there anything I could do to make a deeper emotional connection to the story as well? So filling holes, engaging the audience, and making sure that there's emotional connection there.
So let's get those three. So if we can get holes, engagement, and emotional connection as the three core areas. So first of all, I'd like anyone who's got something to say. Let's come to Ramani first of all, as she's been throwing metaphorical paper pellets at me for the last minute or so. Ramani, please.
Thanks, Jill. Colin, beautiful speech. I loved it. You had me spellbounded from the word go, and I still am there with you, looking at your journey as to how you came here. I mean, it would have been better if you came out to the concluded as to why you moved from States here. That would have been a better conclusion. But apart from that, I loved every second of your speech. I didn't find anything amiss in your speech. The vocal variety was superb, hand gestures. I mean, practically, I just can't find fault with your speech. I loved it. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're with Keynoters. I look forward to listening to more speeches from you. You're truly inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramani. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the whole aspect, and whole without a W? At least I assume that's what Colton was meaning. So are there any, or were there any holes in that speech specifically? And maybe one way we can look at this, because what was very obvious from that speech is that most of Colton's life has been spent in the US. He's probably had less time in Australia than any of us. So does that give us an area where we can find points for improvement? Shavira, please.
I've got one thing. I think Colton actually handled that really well, the cultural differences between US and Australia really well, because he actually explained to us a lot of the cultural differences, especially with the no shoot, no shirt, no service rule as well, because I don't think anyone here knew that, and he showed that he understood Australia. I have one question for Colton. What did your mum say each time you forgot your shoes?
I don't know that it was Toastmasters appropriate, but she would say.
And yeah.
The way of improving would be to say, what made you move to Australia?
I think
that's a very different speech. Can I add to that actually? Apart from that, even probably how you got involved into motivating others, because I thought this huge connection between you and the pastor and how it helped you out, and how engaged you were. But how did you were able to transfer that engagement to when changing slavery? When trying to advocate for slavery? That's something I'm curious about actually.
Okay. Awesome. So how I transitioned to then wanting to then serve others and motivate others to help.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and a bit more detail.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
A bit more detail there, please, because that's something I think that was missing.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's true. I guess I sort of said this is how I was helped. This is what I became passionate about, but then the connection of then motivating others to do something and take action towards those causes.
And how you got them. Sorry. And how you got them involved as well.
Colton, I think that speech certainly could easily form the foundation of an international speech within Toastmasters. But to do that, you need to pitch it very much about the audience. So there needs to be a very strong takeout for the audience. And if we assume that that speech is going to be do the journey from club to wherever it can get to in Australia, that needs to be an Australian audience. But fantastic speech. And I think with a relatively small amount of polish, that could easily go a long way. And I'd certainly be happy to support you on that journey if you wanted to. Do we have any more feedback? Andrew, please.
Thanks, Paul. That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. You know, if that's an impromptu speech, that's fantastic. It's really first class. Now, one of the things that Toastmasters talk about in terms of connecting with your audience is getting an emotional connection. So you did really brilliantly at the beginning by telling us where you came from and how you built the story up. So I think the chronological build up to where you made the decision to actually make speaking a career and to motivate and empower others, it just resonated. So the longer the story went on, the more I felt connected to the story. I felt really, really connected, which made it really difficult for me to stop and look for opportunities for improvement. I'd almost need to go and look at the speech a second time to actually look for those opportunities, because you had me locked in and I was just listening with and hanging off every word. And that's what a great speech is. And that's why I feel everyone's feeling the same, that you really connected.
Oh yeah.
The connection was good because you delivered it in a way which you transitioned between the different stories throughout your life. You told them at a pace which engaged us, and you just managed to get all the chemicals flowing in our bodies that need to flow to make us feel connected. And it was just fantastic. I was just, yeah, man, good, well done. I can't offer you anything. I'd have to see it another time.
Well,
Thanks.
Any other comments?
are there any other comments? Linda, Shavira?
Amazing, amazing speech.
Linda, sorry, I'm struggling where to look at the moment. Linda, please.
Thank you very much, Colton, for a very inspirational speech. The title was The Introduction of Yourself. I feel I haven't quite met you all the way yet. There was no information about how you got to where you're sitting today, who you are today. We heard lots about your journey, but the journey didn't quite finish for me yet. Number one. Number two, your use of the English language and all of the rhetorical devices is exceptional. Your synonyms, your alliteration, your power of three. He cared, he could, he wanted to. The day, that speech, that church, your English is exceptional, especially for an American. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Please.
Thank you, Colton. It's a great honor to listen to you. And it was very, very powerful message delivered. So thank you for that. So I was contemplating what can I offer you. Only thing that I came to mind was some of us have similar journeys. I come from India, a very similar upbringing as you are. Not that poor, but not that rich either. I grew up in a very small place like you. So I had resonated quite a bit with your story. Only thing I would suggest as an offering is that what is a call to action for others that they can do after listening to your story? If you could say that in that speech and repeat it at least a couple of times to make it home, that would be much more powerful as well. So, but overall, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Indy. Shavira, please.
Oh no, sorry. I just wanted to say, well, amazing speech, and it was very well connected. And I liked how you explained your poverty as well as to the other people's poverty as well. I thought that was a really nice leeway through, and I think that really connected with everybody, which I thought was really well done. And it's very beautiful and very inspirational.
Mm-hmm. I think that has largely brought this to an end. So we'll let Colton take a photo of the feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
And now we'll move to our fourth and final prepared speech for the day. We see people in leadership roles everywhere. Too often, they are not real leaders, but rather managers in a position of authority. In politics, we call them bureaucrats. They blindly follow and live by the rules. But real leaders can come from anywhere. They don't have to be in a position of authority. We trust them to make the right decisions, decisions that better the team. With real leaders break rules, please welcome to the stage Andrew Jack.
Thank you, Jill. Real leaders break rules. Why do they break rules? Because they don't live their life by rules. Because they know that the importance of being a leader is to lead where others won't go. And when we look at politicians, they won't go past the bureaucracy. We sit there in frustration, watching them in Parliament, arguing about the tiniest little detail, the tiniest variation to what should have been the standard practice. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a pilot, and a pilot who broke some rules, and a traffic controller that broke some rules, and why their leadership is a model for us all. In 2017, in June, flight KH209 was heading to Florida, and smoke started to come out of the cockpit. Smoke is one of a pilot's worst nightmares because they don't know where the fire's coming from. They may not know how they're going to solve it, and they don't know what the impact's going to be. But they could feel a loss in power. The pilot radioed through to traffic control and spelt out their situation. Thankfully, a traffic control was a very, very experienced traffic controller. He understood the gravity of the problem. The pilot wanted to descend to about, they were at 36,000 feet, and they wanted to descend to about 20,000 feet. Now, in aviation, planes need to travel in lanes. So KH209 was traveling at 36,000 feet. At 34,000 feet was another plane heading to Florida. Now, they're not allowed to pass each other any closer than 5 miles. So the problem here was they were only 2 miles apart. They needed to be 5 miles apart for this plane to descend. When he radioed through the problem, the traffic controller could see immediately that they could not go past each other. What would happen if he did is that all the alarm systems on both planes would go off, triggering the likelihood of a collision. So what does he do? Well, he instructed this plane to veer off at 15 degrees and start to descend immediately. And he contacted the second plane and told them exactly what was happening. He said, there's a plane to your right. It's 2 miles away, not 5. It's going to pass you at about 2.5 miles away. Be prepared for it. And that traffic controller then needed to tell 2 other planes that were lower of the same problem and actually allow this plane to move down. The conclusion of this story is that the plane got to a level where they could deal with the fire and they could land. But what that traffic controller did was he broke all the rules. He let a plane pass within 5 miles. They were not supposed to be that close to each other, and the pilot did the same. Now, our bureaucrats, there might be people out there that would not actually have done that. I mean, how safe would you feel if you hopped on a plane? Let's look at some numbers. In America, there's 26,800 flights a day outside of COVID. And that's 9.8 million flights a year and 215 million passengers. So if you want to feel safe, you need to trust the pilot. You need to trust the mechanic. You need to trust the traffic control. But if you How many of us here would trust them if they wouldn't break the rules? If you knew that they were sticklers for doing it by the book. When Sully landed the plane on the Hudson River, he broke all the rules, but he saved everybody on the plane. I know which plane I'd like to be on. I want to be on a plane where the pilot is ready to break rules and to go out on a limb. And this is what we need from our leaders. Leadership isn't about following the rules. Leadership is about knowing what to do at the right time. Indy and I work in an organisation full of rules. We're a government-owned organisation. And by golly, there's a lot of people in our organisation that want to follow the rule book. But sometimes you've got to throw her out and do what has to be done. And when you do that, that's when you're out on a limb. If you go out on a limb, that's when you're a leader. You'll go where other people won't go. 3 things. Be prepared, if you want to be a leader, to take that risk, to risk not getting your bonus because you broke the rules, to risk actually being reprimanded in the office for not doing it properly, but be prepared to do that for the right reasons, for the people that work for you, and for the benefit of others. Leadership is not a role or a position, it's a way of life and it's a mindset. And it's all about doing the right thing for others. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Andrew. Definitely a lesson for some people. I won't go as far as saying everybody, because as Andrew illustrated, there are people in the world who are genuine leaders, who are prepared to throw out the rule book and do what is right in the moment. But there are some people who need to hear that speech and take the lessons on board. I'd now like to invite Colton to the front to lead our facilitation. And I will assist Colton by scribing.
Excellent. Andrew, what would you like us to focus on this one?
Oh, just telling the story, connection, getting the message across.
Okay. Connection, message, getting across to your audience. So clarity and quality and the ability to convey it.
Yes.
Perfect. We'll wait for her to wipe it down, but do we have a first contributor ready to go? We're here too. So again, he's looking for his storyline, how he developed and delivered the story, and then the clarity and conveyance of the message or the point or the takeaway. Who's got something to share on those ideas? I feel like Indy's got something that he's waiting to share. Come on up.
Linda's got something.
Linda's got something? All right. Indy, could you turn the volume up on the speaker for us, please? All right, Linda, please share.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew, for a very thought-provoking presentation. Yes, I like breaking the rules. Come follow me. I really enjoyed the presentation, but I wanted some more engagement in the vocal variety department to make it more dynamic. And I'd like to see a more concise and call to action in a more dynamic way for your conclusion, i.e. a punching of the fist, for instance. Don't follow the rules all the time. Give us a little bit more dynamic presentation in your vocal variety, please. Other than that, I will continue to forget the rules. Back to you, Colton.
Thank you. Can you turn it back down just a little bit, please? Just to follow up on the vocal variety, I think that Linda has some excellent points to make there. One thing that I do see in particular when we break down vocal variety, I think you do really great at volume control, and you do make a very concerted effort to play with your pacing. But then the other two qualities of pitch and tone are something that we can see even more variety from you on. So breaking it down into even those finer points, pitch and tone in particular would be the two areas I think that you can benefit the most from. Andy, please. Taking the scenic route.
Like you said last meeting.
Thank you, Carlton. Thank you, Andrew, for giving us a very powerful message. We both relate to us. We day in, day out deal with that kind of challenges. And the message on the positive side, great speech, great content, and great use of actually stage. I would say you were moving at a comfortable pace and I was following through the story. It was very, very powerful. And I also like the way you connected with the airplane story. You gave us the sequence and related to what leadership is in critical times when there is loss of life is at stake. So I think on the areas that we want to see a little bit better is what was the call to action for an audience? Like, its leadership is not in a work setting, it's in a personal life, it's in almost every setting. So what would be the key message for us to look at when we are on the road, when we have to follow? There are so many examples of leadership. Even if we are shopping, there are so many examples that we need to look at. And what would be the key message that you want to share with us? If you could emphasize that, it will become much more powerful. Thank you.
Please, Joe.
I think you've got a very good opportunity for a word picture, and you can choose either or both of the pilot or the air traffic control person and almost open with their feelings. So in the case of the pilot, the realization of smoke in the cockpit and generating for the audience being that pilot. And what does that do? You know you've got somewhere between 180 and 500 people sitting behind you whose life is dependent on you and possibly your co-pilot. The other alternative is being the air traffic control person when they receive that Mayday message and the decisions that they have to make. So they now know that they've got one plane with however many people on board and smoke in the cockpit, and they've got however many other planes in the same airspace and not the 5 miles, and the decisions that they have to take, which almost certainly weren't included in Air Traffic Control 101. So I think either or both of those could be woven in and then bring it back to the examples you gave in the workplace, in government, and then end with your call to action, which is something along the lines of, do you want to be the pilot or the ATC guy, wherever you decide to pitch the focus, or do you want to be the follow the rule book, don't think, lemming type person? And I think pitching it that, and you've got the makings of a very powerful lesson. Back to you, Colton.
Excellent. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? All right, well, it looks like we're coming to a close. I do have a couple of thoughts that I'd love to share with you, Andrew. Yeah. So first, on the positive side, I really liked the way you paced in particular certain points and used your volume to help in terms of like asking that rhetorical question. You brought your pitch and your pace down, and then you really allowed it to pause and sit for us to think about what we would do. So I thought that was, in particular, an excellent point. I really appreciated how you broke down the technical, because for us, most people, I think we'd look at the idea of controlling air traffic and be like, I've got no idea. I wouldn't know the first thing, but you broke it down in a way that all of us felt comfortable to understand and follow the story with you. Maybe one thing I might consider doing in Australia is doing that conversion beforehand for your audience. You get the idea of 5 miles, right? We understand the concept, But to just break it down and say this is how far, so they have more of a mental understanding of what that distance is for those people who aren't distance bilingual like myself, right? So that's another little finer point. The big thing that I would like to say as a suggestion, it's optional, right? The speech is yours, but an option you might consider is showing the other side, what happens if you are just a rule follower and the disastrous consequences. And maybe it's totally different, or maybe it's the same if you can find a story in air traffic. And you could even bring it in what sense that, okay, here was the situation and they are stuck because they have to descend, but they can't because they're too close to other airplanes. What do? They're in an impossible situation. There's nothing that they can do. Stop, talk about another situation with an airplane where they followed the rules, which ended in absolute disaster, and then come back and say, this is what they did. They took that rule book, they ripped it in half, they threw it out, and they did what they had to save lives. So something to consider, just because it gives us that contrast of doing the wrong, of how following the rules in certain situations can be the wrong thing and can end in disaster. All right, anybody else, last opportunities? Amazing. Thank you, Andrew. Back to our Toastmasters. As soon as she's done being scribe,
Yes.
I'll hold the space.
Thank you, Colton. And that brings us to the end of our speeches, generally the talking. We now have a few minutes where we will run through some reports and where various members of the meeting will flag what happened and where we deviated from the rules. And to start that session, I would like to invite Indy to the floor to give us a timers report. How long did we take? Who followed the timing rules and who didn't? Indy.
Thank you, Joe, for giving me the opportunity to be a timer. This is my first timers report, so excuse me if I have broken certain rules. So the first speaker was David, and you were 9 minutes, 10 seconds. I think he was a little bit above the limit of 7 minutes. And facilitation was about 6 minutes for that speech. The second speaker was Ramani. And Ramani, you were 10 minutes, 31 seconds. And the facilitation was around 6 minutes for effective coaching. Then we had table topics, and we had about 7 table topics. They were all around 1 minute mark. So I won't go into detail, but they were 1 minute, very close to 1 minute. Only one was, I think I timed myself, was 40 seconds, but I think overall, they were all 1 minute. Then we went into speech 3 in Colton. You were 12 minutes in your speech, and the review was for that speech was 8 minutes. And then we went into speech 4, Andrew. You were actually 6 minutes, and review was about 5 minutes, 30 seconds. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Indy. And now we have our general evaluation. The general evaluator's role is somewhat of a catch-all to evaluate anybody who has yet to be evaluated. So everybody who has contributed to this meeting, with the possible exception of the general evaluator himself today, him or herself, gets some feedback. So to do that catch-all job, I'd like to invite Andrew to the floor.
Thanks again, Jill. Well, I'm absolutely gobsmacked at how reasonably well this meeting ended up running. It's like getting here was a bit of a sprint. So 3 weeks, it's only been 3 weeks since our last meeting, and just the race towards Christmas just put a lot of pressure on getting some things done. So the first item that needs to be addressed under general evaluation is the agenda. Now, the agenda needs to be populated with A, all the speakers and their topics, and B, an introduction. Like Jill read out the introduction for my speech, which I wrote this morning. And I think we need to have an introduction for every speech because you can see the power of a good introduction if you spend some time on it. And I've only done that because Jill keeps telling me I need to do it. So I thank Jill for her persistence, and I encourage everyone else to start to do that in preparing for our meetings. Get your meeting, when you're speaking, get a title into the agenda. Now, I rang Colton up at 8 o'clock last night and asked him if he'd do a speech. So I'm not saying, what I'm trying to say is to all of our club members is let's get our agenda sorted out a bit earlier, and that's a bit on me as well. Now, then to our MC for the day, Jill. What a cracking job. She gets up here and behaves like a professional every time I see her. Now, I don't expect any less from Jill because I'm so used to it, but she runs the meeting really well. She gets up and does it for me. She follows the rules, but she'll break them if she needs to. So I really appreciated that. Now, the real test for today's meeting was that we actually had Shavira running table topics remotely when the body of the meeting was actually in this room, the bulk of the people. And I was a little bit nervous about that. I didn't think it was going to work, but it actually worked fine. So, I think the trick there is that we need to get the tech sorted out even more so than we've got it sorted out. At the moment, we're still getting feedback problems. So from a general evaluation perspective, we've still got a little way to go with respect to getting this technology sorted. But I think we're getting closer to having what could ultimately be a really gold meeting in the context of running virtual / on-premise. Now, the other general evaluation item I want to call out is that all of our round table feedback sessions have just been fantastic. I think the sort of feedback we get from every person in this room just continues to be the differentiator for what this club has to offer. Getting 6, 8 people's feedback on each speech has been fantastic, and I really appreciated that, not only for my speech, but when I heard everybody else's. Now, that's pretty much all I had to cover off in general evaluation. The things that we need to focus on, get the agenda sorted and get the tech right, and just continue to do these round tables because they just give so much value back. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Andrew. So, thank you. That brings us to the end of this meeting. And I'd now like people to cast their mind forward. I believe it's 5 weeks forward, so we make up a little bit of time. Our next meeting will be here in exactly the same place, so we'll run virtual again. So Linda, we'd love you to join us. And if I have got my counting correct, it will be on Saturday, the 16th of January, 2021. If anybody would like to put their hand up for an agenda, mainly the speaking, but for any of the other positions right now, that would be good. And we've got a couple of minutes. Let's see if we can break the back of that agenda for Andrew. I'm willing to do a workshop if there is room on the agenda for that.
Let's see.
Romani's putting her hand up too.
Yeah, so Romani, do you want to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Can I do the MC role? But I just hoping that we go there in person. That might be. We attend in person.
MC remotely is probably a stretch too far.
Oh no, but I'm hoping that we attend. I would like to attend the meeting if possible. It depends on the person I'm pointing to. So I'd like to do MC, please.
Yeah. And I do think that's essential. The MC's here.
Yes.
I'll let you MC and we'll probably attend there.
I'll do my speech that I just did.
Linda.
Mhm.
You've got 5 weeks, so 4 weeks to have it in the agenda with the intro written.
Linda has raised her hand.
Now, what's the workshop on?
Linda's raised
I was
your hand.
thinking of doing the introduction one that I toyed with for doing today, given that you've given us all a rousing over writing an introduction.
Linda, Jill, Linda.
Yes.
Linda's raised her hand.
Sorry, Linda, yes.
Jill, I beg to differ with you when it comes to not allowing an MC remotely. I belong to a hybrid club where I was the MC at the last meeting. It will go perfectly. Take up the challenge, lady.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's an option for you, Shavira.
Okay, either way I can do it then, that's fine. Then I don't have to worry about somebody and if what's happening at home, then that's fine then.
Do we have a volunteer for table topics? That's probably the biggest remaining hole. We've got our 4 speakers. So Colton's happy to take on table topics. So that's really the bulk of the agenda. Anyone who does want to facilitate any particular person or do table topics review or general evaluator, certainly happy to take them, but equally I think those roles can fill in over the next 2 or 3 weeks. The little ones, so we haven't got any facilitators, any scribes, and we haven't got table topics review, we haven't got general evaluator, but we've got the linchpins,
Okay.
which is good.
All right. I've got you guys down 2 scribes for you, David. Indy's going to do timing.
And I always have you facilitate.
Okay, Sultan will facilitate. All right.
Which role is remaining now?
Okay, I think
I'll
we've
send an agenda.
got the bulk of it. If Andrew can get what we've got typed up and out in the next 3 or 4 days, that will highlight the holes, and then we can start working on filling that in. Andrew, you'd like to add something?
Yeah, so we've got international speech contest coming up. So we want to think about, do we want to put a person forward for international? Do we want to run a contest? We either put someone forward or we run a contest. Or if we don't want to run a contest, there's a whole lot of options.
Yes, and I think that the first part for that is to look at who is interested. But based on this morning, I think we've got at least 2 and possibly 3 contenders for an international speech, given that we do have a couple of months to help all of those people applying a little bit of polish.
So it's something, so.
Maybe that should be our February. I think
Well,
February will be early enough.
When is the area?
Romani, when is the area international and evaluation?
2nd week of April.
So, right, so
Oh,
Second week of April, that's clear.
that is late. Is that, you're talking about area or district? The division.
Area. Division is on the 1st of May.
okay, so in that case, we could provisionally say that our March meeting is a contest.
February or March, doesn't, yeah, either.
I'd be
March.
tempted to say March.
Okay.
It gives us that much more time and start thinking about who would like to compete. And if you don't want to compete, what other roles you would like to take. And let's go for it. Let's get those dates onto the calendar on the website.
Okay. So I'll put down March then,
Our March meeting.
and we'll do both contests.
No.
If
Evaluation.
we get, well, let's see if we get people who are interested in evaluation. I mean, the same goes for international. I've said that we've got the makings of some good speeches just based on today. But if those people would rather not compete, obviously that's fine as well. There's no point having a contest if we've only got one contestant. But if we do have people, whether it's based on today's awesome efforts or other speeches, if we've got enough people to make a contest worth doing, let's do it.
Okay.
I think let's provisionally diary our March meeting is both. We've got time to revise that.
Right.
But January and February will be normal meetings, but we'll give priority to people who do want to do some work towards that speech. Does anyone else have anything further to add, or shall I close the meeting?
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to close the meeting, and I will close by thanking everyone who, whether you came to join us here in Hornsby or you came in via the internet, it's been a fantastic meeting, and I'm sure we'll move to further, and we will lick this technology over the next 2 or 3 months. Thank you, everyone.
Question.
One small question before we
Sorry.
kill the internet from Andrew.
Yeah. So whilst you're online, Linda, you've come to the last 3 meetings and we've really, really, really benefited from your presence. Would you like to join our club and stay as a remote member, like attending virtual meetings like this?
I will consider it. Unfortunately, for January, we have an area conference to attend, but I will consider it in the future, Andrew.
Okay. Great. Love your feedback too. Thanks. That was all I had to ask.
Okay, with that, no one else is busting to say anything, so I'd like to thank everyone. I'll thank you both as MC of the day and president of the club. You all add immense value, and I look forward to seeing everybody on, or most of you, on the 16th of January, if not earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas, everyone.
and Happy New Year.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yes.
Whatever. Oh, I just all got too much. Because we lost